This is A New Angle, a show about cool people doing awesome things in and around Montana. I'm your host, Justin Angle. This show is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Hey folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. Today we bring you part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Reed Humphrey, who sits at the threshold of retirement after a long and winding academic career.
I think that it's going to be really important for the business communities, governing communities, to fully understand the role of higher education as the economic driver.
Reed has held nearly every academic position possible at universities, and there is not much he hasn't seen. We pick it up with our discussion of the provost role here at the University of Montana.
For me, it was a role of service. I did not have aspirations to be a permanent provost.
Okay.
And we initially started talking about a 6-month term, which I suggested it probably should be a year just to enhance the stability on campus. And of course, that ended up being 2 years. But I had always intended to return to the deanship. So I did ask to be acting provost, even though there's really not a distinction per se between interim and acting.
Sure.
I felt like I would have, I could have gained better ground as an acting provost.
Branding, right?
Yeah, it was branding. And I used to say, like, UM didn't invent the term interim, but we may have perfected it over the years.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can leave perfection up to debate. But speaking of that, I mean, it begs the question, UM has had a number of provosts in the last several years. Having now spent a couple years in that position without the ambition to hold on to it long term, do you have an explanation for why it appears to be that UM has a hard time hanging on to provosts?
I have an explanation that's grounded in my own experience, right?
Yeah.
And, you do have to go back to 2007 to find an externally hired provost who lasted more than 2 years. And that, of course, was Roy Sangstrom, who came on in 2007, served as provost for 3 years, and then moved down the hallway to become president of the university. And since that time, as you pointed out, we've been through a number of provosts, both interim, acting, and 2 externally hired provosts over that period of time. And as I look back, I can't help but think that that informs me, in addition to looking at the broader landscape of higher education, that a stable or thriving academic environment speaks to a long game.
Mm.
And I think even more so in a public university as opposed to a private university, where in public universities, you're navigating legislative priorities in the state. You're trying to understand the economic and social forces that inform what higher education might look like on the academic side of the aisle. And so there's that. At the same time, provosts have really they live in a parallel universe. One universe is managing all the day-to-day activities. And there's seasons to that, right? There's like faculty evaluation in the fall, and then there's sabbatical evaluations that follow that as you enter into the winter months. And then it's all about budget until you roll up to the end of the academic year. And, now, admittedly, chairs and deans also have those seasons, but everything rolls up to the provost for final decisions and adjudication of requests and the like. So there's the day-to-day piece. And then at the same time, provosts are evaluating centers, programs, institutes on campus and trying to fold that into their own vision for what the academic future looks like.
Right.
And to do all of that, especially at University of Montana, where you have a collective bargaining agreement, you've got to read that CBA. You can't afford to make a mistake.
Right. So
final
just
decisions.
To be clear, we're a unionized faculty, right. So the collective bargaining agreement is an important part of it's a component of our shared governance and all those things.
Yeah, it's not just, and it's more than just faculty evaluation, right?
Right.
It's tenure promotion, of course, but it's also how you adjudicate complaints that come up through academic misconduct or faculty who feel they've been treated unfairly.
Yeah.
And so there's, those are expected, but yet unforeseen. You never know when they're going to arise, but you don't have the option of opting out as a provost. So understanding the CBA at the university understanding the culture and the history of academics at because you have to, the provost has to serve, of course, the president of the university, and they're also serving the regents, but they're also serving the faculty, right? And in fact, that's probably the most important element of it. And if you're going to be successful as a provost, you have to have the trust of the faculty members, because the academic challenges any campus faces are best solved at the most local level. I've always felt that way, and to solve them at the local level, you have to engender that trust, and that's so. Changing the academic landscape, because the academic landscape should always change to some degree, is going to requires time, and sometimes that time in shared governance in the Board of Regents world, and
so you just can't decide.
That can go years.
You just can't decide that that marketing department in the College of Business is bunk, and I just want to cut that because we don't need the marketing major. And in fact, Professor Engel is a pain in the neck. We just want to get rid of him. You can't do that.
No, I could probably take out a contract on you, but that would be
That's a different methodology.
It's a different methodology
that exposes you to a whole different set of risks.
Yeah, and I haven't considered that, Justin. So
that's good to know.
Feel more comfortable in that. You're right, and making decisions at a private university, those can happen like next week, right? But at a public university, and one that has a commitment to shared governance and is also governed by a collective bargaining agreement, makes almost, and I think if you polled any of the prior provosts at they would probably all agree, it can be a painstakingly long process.
Sure. Is it too long?
No, it's not too long, Justin. But I think that there are ways that we could be more expeditious, I think, about how we move things along the arc to get to a decision. But I think that also gets back to that whole issue of stability at the level of the provost, because every provost will enter with a vision for academics that's been informed by their experience and how they see the landscape of higher education. And provosts are typically on a career trajectory to a presidency, so their time frame for getting things done and ensuring that their academic trajectory is intact and helps them move forward doesn't necessarily resonate with the needs of the university.
So you're painting a picture of some mismatches in incentives and structure here that potentially the most successful type of provost here at the University of Montana has to be in it for the long game, has to have deep institutional experience. But at the same time, if they're only going to be in the position for 3 years because they're trying to move on to the next job, how do we adjudicate those constraints as you see them?
Well, I think that if you look at the broader landscape of higher education and you begin to think about how people move along that arc, what you described is really pretty accurate. Like provosts expect to be in the position for 3 or 4 years and then move on. But I think that especially at public institutions, and certainly at the University of Montana, when you look back over the last 15 years, you begin to appreciate that in fact we've been most stable as an academic enterprise when we've had people serving as provost who understand the university. Like one could say, well, before once you accept the position, you could study the legislative priorities. You could read this collective bargaining agreement. You could read all the Montana University system policies and procedures in preparation, and I think that certainly is what any external provost would do. But that's different than the lived experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think anybody that's had a complex job can identify with that in the sense that when you start a job, you're drinking through the fire hose. You have to do the blocking and tackling of the job, at the same time trying to learn the meta aspects of what the job actually is.
Yeah.
Those are two very different projects.
Yeah, actually, it reminds me when President Bodner was appointed, and as we all know, he has an academic background, but he didn't have the administrative trajectory that most do. So he was that comment about drinking from a fire hose came up, and I told Seth, I think it might have been within the first few months he was here. I said, when someone asks you if it's like drinking through a fire hose, a good response would be, I wish it were that small. You know?
Exactly.
But yeah, so yes, we've so I think UM's unique. Maybe not. We're not. I mean, the definition is unique is that like we're the only ones that are like this, and I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure there are lots of public universities that struggle with the same issues in and around building an academic enterprise and having, but the stability in the provost's office, I think, is really fundamentally important.
Yeah, and so let's sort of take to the current moment. We have Provost Adria Lawrence, and she kind of came up through that classic, long, deep institutional career that you were describing. Came as a professor in our College of Education, rose to the department chair, and then a dean within that college, and then stepped in as an interim provost to fill a vacancy.
Right. And that's a trajectory that works. I do think that.
And subsequently was named permanent provost.
Right. And right. And, having, like in my own case, I had 14 years. After Royce was appointed, I was a chair for 8 years, and then I was a dean for 6. And in all those years, you're working with the provost either indirectly and then ultimately as a dean directly. So, and you experience all that we've experienced in the last 14 years and our different attempts to look and reframe the academic enterprise. So all of that institutional knowledge you can bring into the position. And I think Adria, I think it was a really smart, I'm really grateful that Adria was willing to take that on. The provost position is a complicated position, and it can be a career. It can be a deal breaker in a career, right? So that she was willing to step up into that role came at a really vital time for the university. Adria, she's a student of higher education. She studies it intensely. I think that she'd be a good provost anywhere. So I think that that it was a bit genius to appoint her. That's not the usual route. Typically, there's a national search, but I think if a national search probably would have yielded Adria Lawrence as your candidate of choice. And I think that I don't have a crystal ball, none of us do, but I think that the university is well served by Adria in that position. I think that the academic history at UM speaks to having that level of stability going forward.
So a person that you and I both listen to is Scott Galloway. And he puts healthcare and higher education at the top of the list of industries most ripe for disruption. So given the requirements that, as you paint them, for a provost to be successful at a place like the University of Montana, and then given the view that higher education needs some sort of disruption, how can a provost that's risen through the internal ranks and is so deeply entrenched in the way this place works, be the best person to do transformative change, assuming that we need it? I'm not necessarily conceding that assumption, but that's embedded in the question for now.
Yeah, I think transformative change is incremental, right?
Okay.
And I do. And I think we can achieve transformational change. We use that word a lot.
Yeah, we do throw it around.
We do. And but I think that, first of all, Provost Lawrence is not bound by her experience at UM.
Right.
She has, and I think she has a unique talent of taking what she understands to be the processes at UM, how to navigate the Montana University system and the Board of Regents, but then merge that with her continuing study of higher education and the landscape and what does disruption look like, right? It's kind of a terrifying, but at the same time exhilarating place to be. In the room where it happens,
right?
And I have confidence that we are not bound by prior experience with Adria.
Yeah, there's something counterintuitive in there. Like you would expect an outsider to potentially be the person to come in with new ideas and shake a system up, but the view of the landscape as you paint it is maybe less so. Maybe an internal actor is the person with the most experience and perspective to actually make new things happen.
Yeah, and I think our experience speaks to that.
Yeah,
it's not too far of a reach to consider our prior external provosts did come with visions for higher education
and found a lot of roadblocks.
Well, And again, I think that speaks to how difficult it is to navigate. It's challenging. I shouldn't say difficult, but there's challenging, and there's a time frame around affecting change. And kind of like finishing up where we started, there's a dissonance around being able to bring that vision on a timetable that resonates with the provost's own aspirations. And I don't mean to suggest that either of our prior externally hired provosts intended to leave within 2 years. But, people leave for all manner of reasons, right? But I also think that my experience here informs me that, like, the University of Montana is, I think, better served in the trajectory that it's in now. And I'm really confident in that.
We'll be back to my conversation with Reed Humphrey after this short break. A New Angle is proudly presented by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. This show does not happen without these pillars of our community, and I'm so grateful for their support and encouragement. And speaking of support, have you checked out our new website yet? anewanglepodcast.com. There you can support our show directly with a variety of subscription options. Subscribers get access to bonus episodes, additional segments, writings, and other benefits. So check it out at anewanglepodcast.com.
Hey, this is Colter Nuanez from ESPN Missoula, and you're listening to A New Angle.
Welcome back to A New Angle. I'm speaking with Reed Humphrey about lessons learned during a long academic career. It seems like there's been a lot of talk and acronyms and task force and efforts to sort of assess, here are the university's programs, here's what students are enrolling in or not enrolling in, and some conversation about reorganizing things or right-sizing, however you want to put it. Yet at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like a whole lot has happened. What's your take on the history?
If you dial the clock back to our first, when we first started to deal with this, was probably like the 2014, 15. But it really was about ranking your programs from 1 to 100, right, and then drawing a line across the bottom 20, and then the bottom 20 are out. And we've made a fair amount of investment in looking at that option. But I thought then, and I'm certainly convinced now, because in my clinical time, and my clinical time helped inform that, it was like when I was working for a large hospital system and then moving on to university life, I feel like they're not that different, right? And you're going to have programs that are challenged, but they're important programs to the fabric of the institution, right? So you can't simply lop off the programs that have the lowest enrollment. It just doesn't, because it devalues the university. People say because it puts a value judgment, first of all, on the programs of a university. It's not a get out of jail card free to say, well, every program has value, right? I mean, you still have to create a value proposition, I think. Now I'm looking at it through the provost lens, right? Mm-hmm. Our faculty are as good as the faculty anywhere. Mm-hmm. Like our historians are as good as Harvard's historians. Our economists are as good as Yale's. When you've got a classroom that has 30 seats that are filled, that's 30x work, right? When that classroom becomes 15 seats, there's not an economy of scale right there, right? Like the faculty member still has to, be just as creative and just as innovative to teach those 15 as they did with 30. So it becomes really challenging when students vote with their feet, and they have and the programs become what we call under-enrolled, right?
So are you suggesting that the quality of the academics has no bearing on the interest from students?
Oh no!
What's the supply-demand relationship?
I do. Whether your program, and my expressed opinion is, whether your program is what we would consider to be under-enrolled or historically under-enrolled, or your program is exceptional in terms of of enrollment, is related to so many factors that are not necessarily tied to the value of a specific faculty member. There are economic forces in play. There are social forces at play. There are other programs that there are lots of reasons why kids end up in a major somewhere else or under enrolled. But whether you have a robust program or whether you have a challenge program, you've always got to be working at the top of your license to try to be innovative and see those threads of the future. Every program is cyclical, and I still it's in the health professions. Even you always think of the health professions as being so robust, but I've seen it happen in social work. I've seen it happen in physical therapy, where enrollment trends, swing. There's market forces, supply and demand forces. So it's incumbent on every faculty member to create value within the major that they teach. So we talk a lot at this university about expense to revenue ratios and the like, and sometimes we get a little bit too far down that rabbit hole. But I would argue that the actual expense to revenue ratio associated with the humanities is not aligned with public's perception.
Yeah,
right.
That's fair. If you were to look, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, what are the forces that a university leader or anybody who works at a university and thinks about the work we do should be concerned about? What are the headwinds? What are the challenges?
The front page would say that evolution of technology and AI is going to fundamentally change higher education.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that we won't weather those. And I think higher education will embrace the changes in technology. And we already have seen how resistance to AI or ChatGPT, how I think we've pivoted pretty well in higher education to embrace it as the reality and how to utilize it to improve the outcomes for students. I think and maybe this is an old schooler in me too, but I think the real challenge for leadership in higher education and the public is trying to pivot from the notion that colleges are simply training grounds for employed members of society.
Yeah.
People ask well, is college for everyone, Reed? And of course, if you say, yeah, it's for everybody, then people will dismiss you right out of the gate. But I think, that college is important for almost anyone who can actually apply and be accepted. There's such it's a transformative experience for a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I had this conversation not that long ago. Somebody said, Reed, I just read that 60% of the American or 70% of the American population has a negative view of higher education. I'm like, first of all, we only graduate about 50%.
Yeah, that's right.
At best, right? And when you admit 100 kids and only 50 graduate, you probably have 50 that maybe have a slightly disgruntled view of higher education.
Particularly if they've taken on a lot of debt to get that non-completed degree.
And their parents or significant others feel the same way.
Yeah.
But it's important, I think, to modify that narrative, to appreciate that graduation should be the end game, but it's not the only end game. There's so much to be gained by the opportunity to mature just a little bit more and learn about, learn about democracy and learn about governance and understand finance a bit better, so that I think that the challenge 5-10 years from now is ensuring that legislators and that's just not only at the state level but at the federal level understand the value of education and research. I think that it's going to be really important for the business communities, governing communities, to fully understand the role of higher education as the economic driver. In Montana, in particular, but certainly true in other states, with the political landscape that we have, that we're going to be better off when we're working from the inside, when we're working with state legislators, when we're working with our congressional delegation, and on helping everybody understand the economic impact and the societal and societal burden that comes with not having higher education as an important element of a kid's life.
Yeah, I mean, and that does track, particularly in this 2025 legislative session. It's been a good session for the university system.
It has, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's such an important fact to share. People need to know that the Montana University system, the commissioner's office, the university presidents they work really hard to help legislators, especially in rural areas of Montana, appreciate that when they get their hair cut, when they get their car repaired, when their loved one or they are admitted to a healthcare facility, they're getting touched by people who've been trained, both at the vocational and the professional levels.
Yeah,
and that return on investment is what is going to drive Montana's economy.
Last two questions.
Sure.
What was the hardest job in higher ed that you held?
Personally, the hardest job was coming here as a chair.
Yeah.
And having to really invest myself and really change the culture of the school at the time. That was the most challenging element. Certainly, it was a double-edged sword to serve as provost during COVID.
Yeah.
Because there, it was fascinating, because we started with Democratic leadership, and I don't want to be politicizing this at all, but our ability to navigate as a university that stayed open during COVID was so challenging. Every morning, President Bodner and I and other executive leadership, we met every single morning to navigate what was happening that day. We had great compliance. Students were amazing during COVID. Faculty were amazing. They're always going to be, there's always somebody that's going to make your day interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And we dealt with that. So I wouldn't say any of these jobs were hard. They were challenging, but enriching at the same time.
And which one was your favorite?
Oh, gosh. The most rewarding probably was the time as chair, because we emerged as a really strong entity. But I've liked every position I've been in. It's actually been a real privilege to work with the people that I have. And I used to say, you're never too old to be naive.
Right.
And I would discover that from time to time. But my dad once said he never had a bad day in his life, and in terms of work, and there were some tough days for blue collar workers like that.
Sure.
So, but I feel really blessed to have had a career in higher ed. It's just been really awesome.
Well, we're grateful to have had you here for so long in so many roles and with so many contributions. I'm so glad you reached out to have this conversation and for allowing me to press you on some controversial topics and not shy away from them. Reed, thank you for all you've done here. And I hope we can continue these conversations.
I'm always available. Thanks,
As
Justin. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to A New Angle. If you like what we do and want to support us directly, please consider a subscription at anewanglepodcast.com. A New Angle is recorded at Studio 49, a generous gift from UM alums Michelle and Lauren Hansen. Our presenting sponsors are First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Kelly Larson is our producer. Maddie Jordan is our production assistant. VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks made our music. And Jeff Meese is our master of all things sound. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.